Good afternoon, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome here at this GFFA expert panel from BMZ. A warm welcome because for many of you it may be cold here in Berlin today. And my name is Jasmin Hundorf. I work at GIZ, German Development Corporation, and it will be my pleasure today to lead you through this expert panel. Ready for a joint takeoff, bioeconomy and the transformation of agricultural and food systems. So this panel is organized by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ. So what journey did you sign up for? What is going to expect us today? We will have a packed session today. We will have a keynote speech. So even if some of you may not be so familiar with the concept of bioeconomy, we will have our expert, Julius Ekuru, here with us, who will make sure that you will all be safe on the concept. And then we will have two panel discussions, one with our distinguished high-level policy participants, and another one that is focusing more on the on-the-ground experiences of bioeconomy. Such a broad concept, but what does bioeconomy really mean on the ground? So we are very happy that the room here is so full of people. A very warm welcome again to all of you. And in particular, I would also like to acknowledge the participation of Honorable Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Dr. Alui Sabi Abdullahi Kon from Nigeria. Thank you very much for accompanying us today as well. So, talking about a packed room, a full program, and time. Time is going to be the major challenge today. We have such a great set of speakers, so I guess we are already ready for takeoff. And I would like to invite our State Secretary, Jochen Flassbart, to board us on the topic of bioeconomy and transformation of agriculture and food systems from a BMZ perspective. Very welcome.
So, Excellency, colleague, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, good to be here again. Always good to start the Grüne Woche with GFFA, to have not some food to eat, but some food for thoughts. And now is the second time that I participate here, so I need to be here next year again to make it a tradition. Some of my colleagues understand the joke. And again, it's great to have this discussion here at the GFFA on bioeconomy and the transformation of the agriculture and food system. And it is very at the heart of how we approach at BMZ, and in a broader sense also at the German government, the challenges of the food and agriculture system, and at the same time what we call the planetary challenges of our world. And just let me look back a couple of weeks ago, at the end of last year, we had the extraordinary situation that we had all conference of the parties of the three Rio Conventions just in a couple of weeks, starting with the Biodiversity COP in Colombia and Cali, followed by the Climate COP in Baku in Azerbaijan, and finally the UN CCD COP in Saudi Arabia in Riyadh. And all of them are very much linked to the topic we are discussing here. The capacity of land very much depends on how fast we are in mitigating climate change and how fast we are in adapting to the unavoidable climate change. The development of biodiversity in a sense of ecosystem also is linked to the issues of fertile soil and the restoration of soil wherever we lost it, and we do so to an enormous extent. Looking even further back, when we in Germany hosted in 2008 the Biodiversity COP, we introduced the concept, and this is very much linked to the bioeconomy concept. I would say it's even basically the same with different words. We introduced the concept of the economy of ecosystems and biodiversity, the famous TEEP study, and that was very much looking beyond a more narrow concept of biodiversity, looking what do we need to preserve in ecosystems or restore in ecosystems to provide services. And that is also what is in the core of a sustainable economy, bioeconomy. And I think it's very relevant to understand that bioeconomy is not bioeconomy, and bioeconomy is not per se a contribution to a sustainable food and agriculture system. It has to be linked to the three dimensions of soil, climate and biodiversity, and if you want to add a fourth one, you easily can add the water dimension as well. And in such an understanding, bioeconomy is in a way the key to create sustainable agriculture and food systems. We are far away if I am in a more polemic mode, I would say we are galaxies away from sustainable agriculture and food systems, but we need to achieve them, otherwise we will not reach the targets of the three conventions I mentioned, but we also will not create the capacity to feed the people in our world. And that is maybe the challenge that is so very obvious, that we are not where we should be, that the numbers of people suffering from hunger or malnutrition is not decreasing, and that is something we must not accept. And I think bioeconomy, in a way we are discussing it later on in a minute here on the podium, is the way forward to link the SDGs with the agriculture and food system in a sustainable way. There are three aspects I want to mention what makes the system sustainable. So number one is we have to prioritize food security and nutrition for all. We also have other dimension of bioeconomy. Of course, they are able to provide nature-based raw materials in the chemical sector, also in other sectors, also in the energy sector. But number one priority needs to be, as long as we have people suffering from hunger, food security and nutrition for all. Number two is we need to link it and make an integral part of the overall 2030 agenda, the SDGs, and specifically we must not allow that the road ahead is creating new inequalities. And my third point is we need international collaboration to speed up in achieving a sustainable food and agriculture system. So we as BMZ are making this our red line, or if you like, a green line for collaboration with other countries. We have we are fostering projects in Brazil and Ecuador with a focus on sustainable utilization of biodiversity in the Amazon region. We have the project Bioinnovation in Africa, supporting African-European partnerships on biodiversity conservation in Namibia, South Africa, Cameroon and Madagascar. And with India, my dear colleague, we have a very intensive, not only dialogue, but also project-based cooperation for agroecology approaches, and India is really pioneering on that. We will hear in a minute more about this from first-hand information. Thanks again for being here. Thanks again for discussing this out, and I wish the conference a fruitful success. Thank you.
much for this great opening introduction on the multiple challenges we are facing as regards global objectives and sustainable objectives, also the 3 priorities of BMZ on bioeconomy, and starting with the country examples, what we will discuss in a minute. But before, to make sure everybody is understanding the concept of bioeconomy and its global perspective, I would like to invite to the stage our keynote speaker, who is Julius Okuru, Dr. Julius Okuru. He's head of Bioinnovate at the International Center of Insect Physiology and Ecology, ECP, in Kenya. And he's also the co-chair of the International Advisory Council on Global Bioeconomy. So the floor is yours, Julius. Yeah, I think maybe if that is okay with you, everybody can see you very well there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Jasmine, and Your Excellencies and distinguished ladies, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to speak to you very briefly about sustainable bioeconomy and the transformation of agriculture and food systems, focusing on opportunities and challenges. And as Jasmine said, maybe to kind of explain what bioeconomy is and some of the drivers. So as some of you who are in the panel heard, bioeconomy has advanced rapidly in the last 20 years, starting with the first dedicated bioeconomy strategies by the USA. USA had what we call a bioeconomy blueprint in 2011, and then the European Union had a bioeconomy strategy in 2012, and then South Africa had also a bioeconomy strategy in 2013. But today we have more than 65 countries worldwide with what we call dedicated national bioeconomy strategies. And more recently, Africa has begun developing what we call regional bioeconomy strategies based on regional economic blocks, starting with East African Community in 2022, and several countries, Namibia, Ethiopia, have also now national strategies. And right now we have the G20 and also the G7 and several multilateral organizations like the FAO and also the Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research, or the CGIAR, are developing bioeconomy programs based on their science and innovation strategies. Now, the narratives which are shaping this rapid adoption of bioeconomy can be explained from 3 perspectives, and depending on the region you're in. First is the idea that bioeconomy can replace or at least reduce dependence on fossil fuels, which are responsible for much of the carbon emissions that are warming the planet and causing climate change. And this view is mostly in Europe here. And then second is that biodiversity-rich regions of the world like Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, can add value and sustainably use their biological resources for economic growth and jobs, of course driven by innovation. So this view is mostly in Africa, or what we call the Global South. And third is that the advancement in bioscience and biotechnology can create new opportunities for biomanufacturing and new industries of tomorrow. Now, this is a predominant view in North America and also to some extent in Asia, particularly China. But regardless of the narrative pursued, they are all interrelated and use scientific knowledge and innovation as the common denominator. They also converge around providing nature-positive solutions that reduce carbon emissions and prevent loss of biodiversity, ensuring overall health of people and the planet. So this is the common denominator in all these perspectives. Now, as we know, our agriculture and food systems, and the State Secretary, you did mention very well, are largely unsustainable. Agriculture is responsible for between 20 and 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and also the largest contributor to biodiversity loss. In sub-Saharan Africa, for example, farm productivity increase is largely through expansion of farmland and not so much on sustainable intensification or use of technology. And a recent study by the IUCN in 2021 showed that agriculture was the greatest threat to biodiversity. So 34% of species on the IUCN red list have agriculture documented as the threat to their loss. And many of these threats are direct through conservation of, or conversion, not conservation, conversion of natural habitats to croplands, pasture lands, plantations, irrigation, etc. And additionally, our food systems are characterized by huge post-harvest losses. In Africa, it's up to 40%, and also food waste resulting from unsustainable consumption. Therefore, transforming the agriculture and food systems should aim at, 1, reducing carbon emissions from production, processing, and consumption, and number 2, preventing loss of biodiversity. And also the State Secretary mentioned the issue of soil health and water and so on. Now, all this should be done while ensuring profitability, social inclusion, and nutrition to guarantee the well-being of the people. And that is, we can make our agriculture and food systems sustainable, nutritious, and profitable at the same time. Sustainable, nutritious, and profitable at the same time. And it is bioeconomy that can enable this transition. Now, there are quite a number of solutions that sustainable bioeconomy can offer, but I just want to mention, I'm not going to detail to some, that you can consider in the discussions. One is biomaterials for construction, packaging, and so on. And now we're also talking about sustainable aviation fuels based on the renewable crop and forest biomass, more advanced processes, including synthetic biology. We also look at biorefineries, we look at regenerative forestry, architecture, urban design, insects. I come from the only institute in Africa that deals with insect science, and insects as bioconverters and new sources of protein and fatty acids is emerging as a new area of inquiry. And of course, other nature positive solutions, including biopesticides, bioprocesses that conserve water. Now, ready for takeoff? Yes, I think we are ready. I just mean we are ready. And I would like to suggest 3 areas where I think we can take off. So we need to take off, but we need to take off together. So one is encourage more policy dialogues and studies to find the right incentives for advancing the bioeconomy for agriculture and food systems transformation. Could tax incentives, for instance, encourage sustainable practices, social, economic sustainability, and promote sustainable consumption and all that. So it's an area of inquiry. Number 2, could we develop bioeconomy clusters that offer opportunities for innovation, collaboration, based on products and services, biologically based products and services? These kind of clusters are very useful for rural transformation and also urban communities, and they are a great link to connect local production to agro-processing to new markets. And then lastly, knowledge exchange and capacity building, especially for the youth in the bioeconomy. And we say that such knowledge exchange should not only include scientific knowledge, but also indigenous knowledge. So, in conclusion, a bioeconomy is arguably, in my view, the most viable pathway for transforming our agriculture and food systems. And it's a pathway that I believe would ensure that the food systems not only become more sustainable, but also profitable. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Julius. Yes, hopefully we can engage in the dialogue later. But so far, I hope that everybody feels safe now on bioeconomy after the keynote introduction. Thank you very much. And you've mentioned in your major points that bioeconomy can help us make food systems nutritious, sustainable, and profitable. So we will try to, this is the concept, and we will try to see now with the discussion with our policy panel and the practitioners if that is also true from this perspective. And you mentioned as one recommendation, policy dialogue. So this is actually what we are going to start now. We will go to our first panel, move to our first panel now, and if the technique, yes, I think you can hear me well again. I want to invite on stage our panelists for the first panel, which is Saji Krishnan. He's the chairman of the National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, NABARD in India. Very welcome. An applause. Then we have with us today John Mulungoti. He's the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Agriculture in Zambia. Welcome. And thank you very much for being with us from Brazil, Marina Godoy de Lima, Deputy Executive Secretary of the Ministry of Family Farming. So, we have heard at the beginning, with the opening of State Secretary Flaspat, that the three major priorities for BMZ are bioeconomy and natural resources, planetary boundaries, then a second one, food security and bioeconomy, and also which kind of framework conditions are necessary for successfully reach a sustainable bioeconomy. So this is basically what we are going to have the pleasure today to discuss with our panelists. And without further ado, I would like to start with you, Marina. As a representative from Brazil, a mega diverse country, from a biological point of view, social point of view, also agricultural practices are very diverse. You are one of the front runners on bioeconomy strategy development in the G20 and beyond. How do you manage in Brazil to move forward on bioeconomy without putting at risk natural resources?
Bem, obrigada pela apresentação.
Well, thank you for the presentations. I thank you for the opportunity that you have given to me for being here representing Brazil. I want to show some of the initiatives we are developing in the development of bioeconomy and the transformation of food systems. As it has been put in the beginning, Brazil is one of the most diverse countries in terms of economies. We have 6 biomes with about 20% of the biodiversity in the world. And this creates a unique opportunity, and it's a very big challenge to develop sustainable supply, productive chains, and to find solutions based on the environment, nature. In Brazil, we believe that it's very important to have the family farming and the indigenous farming and the participation of traditional peoples in the Amazon and forests and the descendants of African people, they are very important to develop biodiversity. FAO has a study that says that 80% of the food produced in the world comes from family farming, and that's not different in Brazil. Brazil has in the family farming one of the largest food producers of Brazilian families. And we do believe that the development of bioeconomy and social bioeconomy in a sustainable way, that will bring about changes in the food system. And this is linked to the acknowledgement of the central role that family farming has, and also the traditional communities have. We have 70% of the family farming in Brazil. In rural areas, we have about 4 million families working in it. And this production model, which is diversified based on small and middle-sized communities, it contrasts the monocultural model that has been developed across the globe. And also Brazil, in the previous years, we focused a lot on the production of commodities. And nowadays, with this new government, with this new view of family farming as playing a key role, we have developed specific policies to foster, to stimulate the relationship, the correlation between the production of food and the diversification of production. We believe that family farming is a viable solution for to solve the problem of diversified foods and to preserve our forests. And nowadays, we have invested in public policies, specific policies that stimulated transformation of this food system. And I say here that we work with the importance of the state in stimulating this change of production models. And in this sense, the Ministry of Agricultural Development, and together with other ministries, we have created initiatives to strengthen this family farming, and we have created structures that enable this access to land, ecology training, and enabling the access to loans so that you have sustainable loans with a very low interest rate for those that want to finance the production of social biodiversity or agroecology. And we also have products that guarantee minimum prices so that the costs are subsidized for products where the marketplace is well below the cost of production. And this, coupled with policies that help produce products. We want to enable the access to stable markets so that this production is viable.
Just make sure, because we will be able to focus on the framework conditions later also. So I don't know if you want to conclude by this?
Não, assim, a única conclusão
que eu gostaria de conclusion I would like to say here is that we consider that the stimulation to public policies for this kind of public it's extremely important for the transition of food systems.
I think it became very clear the crucial role of family farming, of that diversity, be it culturally and biologically, to advance on a sustainable transformation of agriculture and food systems, and thereby also bioeconomy. And bioeconomy, the importance to talk with different ministries, and not only the economic perspective, not only the agriculture perspective, but to have this cross-sectoral approach. Maybe one more comment or one more perspective from another country, Mr. Shachi. India is also very heavily affected from climate change. There's some prognosis that there might be declines in productivity due to climate change. Are you at NABARD, at the bank, also implementing policies that take into account the biodiversity and climate change perspective?
Yeah. Thank you. India, as you know, is a big country. We have 140 billion people to feed. The productivity is very low, without even taking into account bioeconomic needs. It's at least in most of the crops, our productivity is less by around 30% from the world average. So India has a challenge to protect the livelihood, but at the same time, protect those livelihoods in a sustainable manner. So now what we are trying to do is that while protecting the livelihood, we should now take into account their incomes as well, as told by the keynote speakers. So we are working with working with fragmented holdings, because India, the size of the agriculture holding is only 0.7 hectares, which is very low. So we need to we are now actually collectivizing the farmers, and then through the collectivized approach, we are pushing in the policies which they need to adopt in terms of bioeconomy, the sustainability, and such other things. So our programs, along with government, with NABARD, which is the National Development Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, so our programs are deeply integrated with climate smart strategies. That is the one thing. And with these strategies are addressing the dual challenges of climate mitigation and adaptation, and then the resilience of the rural community as well. So now, under climate smart agriculture, we were happy to associate with the German government in terms of watershed. At that point of time, bioeconomy was not the word which was there, but then natural resource management was done through watershed developments, the livelihood programs for the tribal areas in the area in which they reside, so that we can avoid them for migration to the cities. So then, now we are structuring Jiva. Jiva in Sanskrit means life, where we are associating with the German government for agroecology partners. And as a result of that, what we are trying to do is that to protect their productivity in a sustainable manner. And in the process, we need to put in a lot of resources as well. So we are partnering with international agencies like Green Climate Fund. Then there is an adaptation fund of UN. So we are sourcing, apart from the domestic sources, we need to source. And then the rural infrastructure which we are creating is also being made climate resilient. The bridges, the roads which we are doing. So all these things, plus renewable energy concepts are coming up. And then the circular economy concept also is being used. So we need to now, our primary aim is to protect the livelihood, their incomes, but at the same time, India is a diverse country with 30 states. The policy matters are related to agriculture and rural development are with the state government. So at the national level, what we are doing is to give a framework and advise them, and advocacy we need to do, and then work with the state governments to embed in their policies these agroeconomic strategies.
Thank you very much, and also for this holistic perspective that from irrigation to road building, everything must be included, and climate change and biodiversity considerations mainstreamed into these policies. And we will actually be continuing to talk about competing policies, because economic development is one of these policies, nature conservation and climate change is one of these policies, but as has been mentioned by the State Secretary, food first is in bioeconomy projects by BMZ the prerogative. So we would like to talk with you, John, about how these trade-offs and weighing between different policy priorities from the economic point of view, a social point of view, to not leave local communities behind. How is that done in the Zambian context? Can you elaborate on that?
Thank you very much. Food first. Food first basically is a very tricky issue and topical issue. But what is important is to note that you need to strike a balance. Striking in a balance in the sense that it will only be food first if the conditions for production available. And the conditions can only be available if you strike a balance and ensure that you conserve the natural resources. In the Zambian context, for example, in the 2023-2024 farming season, which is last year, we experienced the driest prolonged dry spell, which is a drought, where 84 districts out of a total of 116 districts farmers lost everything. In Zambia, 70% of the population depend on agriculture, and the majority of these farmers are small-scale farmers, and they depend on rain-fed agriculture. So we have experienced climate change. The effects are real in Zambia, and we've now realized that it is time for us to take bioeconomy, climate-smart agriculture seriously. And we are now putting our policies because we've tested, we've felt it, and we've seen how farmers literally lost everything. So now we are asking farmers to ensure that they conserve the forestry. We conserve our water bodies, and we practice climate-smart agriculture or sustainable agriculture so that tomorrow we are assured of food security. You can only be food secure if you are sure that you're going to produce food the following day.
Perfect. Thank you very much for this statement from the context of Zambia. Only if we have a working economy, bioeconomy, food production economy, we can make sure that everybody gets enough nutritious food in a sustainable manner. And you mentioned 70% of rural population in Zambia. In India, it might be a little bit different. You have the biggest population, we have already heard. You have some of the richest people in the world, but you do have challenges on poverty and food security in rural communities also. How do you face this challenge?
As I said, India is a diverse country where there is prosperity, but then 70% of the population are still in rural areas where the per capita income is lower. So now the climate change effects are very evident. The gross cropped area is 200 million hectares, of which we can't increase the gross cropped area unless we protect these areas from the climate-related events. So the productivity improvement is the only way we need to go, because we can't increase the area under production. And even, in fact, the area under production is coming down because of the climate events, disasters happening, landslides happening. So what we are trying to do is that we work, as I already told, that we are having a very fragmented holding. So we work with farmer-producer organizations to educate them regarding the need for improving productivity. We work with the researcher entities to come up with climate-resistant varieties, drought-resistant varieties, and such other things we have, and then dissemination of these research findings to the field. So we are working with pilot projects across the country, and India is a very vast and remote areas also need to get inputs regarding these scientific practices. And one more thing is that India, almost all agroclimatic conditions in the world exist in India. And India, maybe in 70s, have achieved food security. But then that food security itself is under threat because of the climate events. So we need to have, on a sustainable basis, the food security. And in fact, we need to produce less of cereals and more of pulses, oil seeds, which are more nutritious. So we are working with the farmer organizations. We actually are educating these people from moving from less water guzzling crops to more water use efficient crops. And so that we can conserve water at one stage. At the same time, we can also improve the nutrition provided to the people over there. So the malnutrition is rampant. Now with government interventions, a lot of programs are there, including on natural farming, a lot of programs are there. So that we are getting in a concerted manner with partnership with the subnational entities like the states, influencing their policies and improving the overall well-being and livelihood of the people over there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chachi. And I think both of your contributions already made very clear that the three of these policies are interlinked, because there's only food security with safeguarding the natural base and with making sure that there is economic growth. So I think that came very clear from your country perspectives. And Marina, you've also already mentioned the importance of family farming for the government, for your ministry. And I think in Brazil, there's also this particular situation of rural and indigenous communities. So it will be interesting for us to understand in the development of your bioeconomy, how do you make sure that you leave no one behind and ensure that also local and indigenous communities are included?
Well, firstly, this administration has taken up a dialogue with traditional communities, which previously the social participation was through councils, and we have a major council, which is the Council for Food Security. And through participation of these communities with the government, we can direct and focus public policies on these issues. So for us to be able to make sure that nobody's left behind, what we're trying to do is focus on the policies for this more vulnerable audience, so to speak. And we have policies which are known in the world as the program of Bolsa Familia, the food procurement system, the national food system for schools, which has been a focus and a priority for including also the traditional peoples, indigenous peoples, to have access to these policies. That's one of the things I consider jointly with social dialogue a priority for not leaving anybody behind.
Thank you very much. And I think this is the perfect bridge to move into our third session, because the third topic that we want to discuss with our distinguished panelists is policy frameworks. So you've already stressed the importance of public policy. And now we want to get a little bit more concrete on this. And as a financial actor, Mr. Shachi, you are actually working on the implementation of finance mechanisms. And maybe you would like to share with us some of the success stories in India on policy and financial frameworks for a sustainable and socially just development of the agricultural and food system.
Yeah. Sorry. So our policy framework need to be a little integrated in terms of integrating the socio-economic development. The policy, focus on socio-economic development. That is the overall overarching objective of the policy. But then while doing that, the ecological conservations need to be integrated. So that is one thing which we are taking care while implementing this. The policy is becoming more integrated. And while integrating, we are going for support for NRM, that is Natural Resources Management, agroecology, and biodiversity preservation. These are all given importance. But then overarching thing is this overall socioeconomic development. So on these lines, so NABARD is helping government in raising resources for sustainable practices. Of course, the resources are meant for biodiversity conservation, then natural farming. Then we are also piloting a lot of such initiatives to showcase to the people that such initiatives are worth doing without affecting their income. So in fact, one of the earliest initiatives is the watershed development program, which we did with the German government. The Indo-German collaboration facilitated that. We expanded that to tribal development programs, that is the orchards in the rural areas, and then the ecological program, which we are doing. But then, as I said earlier, that we need to develop community development models, because in India, because of the fragmentation, individually we may not be able to work with the farmers, because numerous farmers, 70% of the population depending on agriculture. So we need to develop community development models for that. Farmer-producer organizations, we are aggregating farmers, and one of the largest poverty eradication measures in the world, that is a self-help group concept, with around 110 million people. Million groups have been formed, which is an enormous size. And we are working with those, they are essentially women groups. So gender sensitivity also was brought in terms of sustainable development. Being an entity for developmental activities, we are working with these groups for capacity development in terms of technology, dissemination, in terms of equipping them with the information regarding the latest developments. And overarching thing is the technology integration. We are actually, India is a vast country, so we can't physically monitor each and everything. So we have a technology layer on this for monitoring and evaluation. And we are also geotagging whatever activities we are doing for remote monitoring. So with the satellites, images and all, we can find out what are the changes which have been brought in and which will satisfy the national government and also the state governments to ensure that the work is going on as planned in the field. And then we are also working with private sector, the public-private partnership for sustaining rural development, which is very much is the need of the hour to augment the need of the need for the public development, that is rural development. But then we need technology, we need money of the private partnerships which is being brought in. So in that count, we are developing models on waste to wealth solutions. So the waste, agriculture waste, are being used for creating wealth. The biochar, the bioprom initiatives which we have are all pointing towards that direction. And then for developing all these things, we are, as I said earlier, we are collaborating with research institutes because we bring in the research outputs from the other countries, but then we need to customize those research outputs for suiting the local needs. So that customization also we are doing.
Thank you very much. I think that was a very broad answer. We have heard also that how different concepts like agroecology or watershed management feed into the holistic perspective, and then the role in the framework conditions of the different stakeholders, private sector, research institutions. So this is all important in the Indian context. But I would also like to know about Zambia. Do you have particularly policies where you try to make sure that both the food security needs, but also economic development of the rural space and social inclusion are met? Can you share some experiences from Zambia with us?
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, in Zambia we do have policies which talk to bioeconomy at large. For example, last year we launched what we call Comprehensive Agriculture Transformation Program, and this is a program which looks at the transformation of agriculture in Zambia. And as we transform agriculture to levels where we want it to be, we have to ensure that environmental sustainability is maintained. Secondly, we have developed the Climate Smart Agriculture Investment Plan, which is a blueprint and guides us as we promote climate smart agriculture on the do's and don'ts, and also it informs us on the aims of what we want to achieve. For example, we've looked at the clear land for production, and we are telling ourselves that and telling our farmers, and just like the keynote speaker indicated, when increasing production and productivity, we don't need to clear more land. We need to enhance productivity. If I can give an example, like in corn production or maize production, small-scale farmers' productivity is very low. It's just below 1.8 tons per hectare. And for us to drive productivity high, we are telling our farmers to use proper farming methods without cutting more trees, for example. Secondly, we have incentivized the use of environmentally friendly technologies through the waiving of import duties, because much of the technology in Zambia we import, so that a lot of people can have access to environmentally friendly technology. We are also promoting market access for the sustainably produced products. So it's a cocktail of measures which promote the use of sustainable agriculture.
Super, thank you very much. A cocktail of measures, I really like that. And I think you also made clear that, for instance, tax measures, economy might have an impact on it. So that was interesting, and you went back to what we've been discussing at the beginning of the session, climate as a framework. And really, how can we increase productivity while not going in the direction of being too environmentally unfriendly, but we can do it directly in a climate and biodiversity friendly way, as an example in the Zambian context. So, time is running very fast, but you will have a last opportunity to comment today, so anything that still needs to be said can be said now, because we asked all of you from your country perspectives. If I think probably more countries are here in the room, Nigeria, it's an honor to have the minister here with us, and also maybe other countries. So if you could recommend if you have one recommendation to other countries who want to embark on a bioeconomy path, what would that recommendation be? And as we are short on time, please be brief in your response. Thank you very much. So we will start over there.
So my recommendation will be that no one-size-fits-all approach will not work. Each country will have their own issues and their own specifications, customizations are needed. So they can learn from the experiences of other countries, but then while learning that, adapt it. And if your research stage is not at that level where we need to import those research inputs, then we need to test that on the pilot basis or customize it and change it. So, for example, in India, we have different biodiversity, agroclimatic conditions are huge. There is scope for more biomass production and such other things where carbon sequestration can be made possible. But then India's developmental aspirations are huge. 75% of India's development aspirations are yet to be made. So we need to ensure that whatever 75% we need to do, we are doing in a sustainable and climate smart way. For that, we need to embed the sensitivity of climate actions or the sensitivity of the climate smartness or climate resilience in every, not only in agriculture and food systems, in other activities as well. Otherwise, there will be collateral damages happening. There can be a lot of issues which get migrated from other sectors to agriculture sector or in the food sector and such other things. So we need to be cautious about that.
Thank you very much. Very clear. Marina, from your point of view, what would be your recommendation?
Well, as we have the experience, what we've been developing in Brazil, I think my recommendation would be to look at the role of the state in this role of incentivizing the transition of food systems. When I talk about incentivizing by the state, that is guiding the resources and working with a legal framework that gives legal assurance for institutions to continue through different administrations and including dialogue and also reaching out to the communities, which are the ones that are at the receiving end of these policies. So I recommend a more holistic approach, a more holistic gaze on the legal framework, on budget, and also social participation.
Thank you so much, because this is what we are going to do here now. We have heard the public policy perspective, and now we are going to talk with the stakeholders. So it is an event, but we are just trying to do exactly that engagement now. Thank you very much. And now finally, John, what would be your recommendation to others who want to go on the track of sustainable bioeconomy?
For countries which don't have national strategies, my recommendation is that you need to quickly have a national blueprint or strategy. And most importantly, having a document doesn't solve anything to implement what you put in that document through consultation with the key stakeholders. For those who already have, I think knowledge exchanges and skills is very important with other countries. You can't live in isolation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. We are concluding the first set of today. Maybe we will have the possibility to hear you later on the second part also. And yeah, applause, please, for this great perspectives. Thank you very much. So while the technical team is setting up a video message, because we were talking about stakeholder engagement, from the three of you mentioned the importance of stakeholder engagement, we are going to listen to one perspective from a local indigenous community in Brazil. And meanwhile, I will explain to you, because it is dark outside and it's in the afternoon. So what we are going to try now is really to get you as the audience also on board in this second part. We will discuss with practitioners on bioeconomy. We've heard it's a broad concept. Many different policies like agroecology or watershed management feed into it. But what does it really mean on the ground? This is what we are going to understand now with our great second set of experts who I'm going to invite on stage now. So we will have with us, and don't worry, the experts know that you can ask any questions, so they are prepared. We will have here with us today Rick Kutsch, who's the director of the Union for Ethical Biotrade. Please take the seat. Thank you. And then we will have with us Marcela de Sousa. She's the director of the Center for Resilience Studies at the Watershed Organization Trust in India. Thank you very much for being with us. And also Irene Cacere, she's the senior scientist at the Research Institute of Organic Agriculture, FIBE. Very welcome. And as you see, we have 2 seats left, so maybe some of you want to join us later in the discussion. But first of all, what we are going to do is that we are going to listen, if the technical team has all set up, to a video message from our friend Barney from Brazil, who's going to share his local point of view on what bioeconomy means and in his indigenous community.
Good afternoon to you all of those who can hear us. I'm Antônio de Carvalho Machinawa. I'm Monique Ibané. I live in the Caxinawa Nova Olinda community in the municipality of Feijó. And I work as an agroforestry agent. I'm a technician. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my working experience to our colleagues in Germany, a little bit about our experience, the work as an agroforestry agent to encourage agriculture production, to work on the surveillance and monitoring of the territory, and also to work in the preservation of animals, preservation of the fish. We also work within the rural capacity building, within the territorial and environmental management plan of the indigenous land, with the reforestation and recovery of the riparian forestry and the indigenous communities as well. I also work with the PAA, the Food Acquisition Project, with CONAB, and I articulate this project. I bring together our production, the delivery of regional food to the students. Today, we have 30 producers registered in this project, the PAA, and we are enrolling even more. Now we have a plan of working with the PENAI, and I wanted to honor our colleagues who will be working in this conversation in Germany about social bioeconomy. It was unfortunately not possible for me to come due to my problems with my passport, but I wanted to send you a message. The forest is life. The forest is everyone's right and duty. Within the forest, we have education, health, we have our science, we have our medicines, and we have our food, which are the fruits of the forest. We have bacuri, pama, abiurama, genipapo, and also we have our cocoa And so many good things. We have it all. And we plant all of this in our community. So I just wanted to say that I'm very happy. Unfortunately, I can't be there, but I can communicate to you the importance of all this, how good it is for us all to be able to work with cultural exchanges.
So we went from the broad policy context to a very local experience from Brazil, but we found many points, Marina, that you already mentioned from exactly the other perspective. So we already see the connections. And I would like to know from our panelists now, having heard the local experience from Brazil, Rick, from your institution, it's a global institution, does it relate to you? Do you have similar experiences on, particularly he mentioned some crops, biotrade and bioeconomy? What's the perspective on that?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Indeed, I think the presentation from the colleague from Brazil resonates very, very much. We are a platform of companies, brands, processing companies, but also local companies that are all committed to sourcing with respect for people and biodiversity. It's a commitment, it's a journey. And our focus as an organization is on the smaller ingredients. And I was walking through the premises today and just picked up some of the examples. So if you take your tea, there's rooibos, there's vanilla, there's mint, there is, I grabbed somewhere, M&Ms. Now the M&Ms are chocolate and peanuts, but what you may not know is that there's a tiny little coating on these M&Ms that is from carnaúba. And carnaúba comes from Brazil. It's endemic to Brazil. It comes from one region in Brazil, produced many times by family workers. And this I put on my face this morning. This is a Veleda face cream, which includes jojoba, probably from Argentina. It includes also carnaúba from Brazil. And it also includes beeswax from Africa. So a lot of products that we have around us are already there. Maybe to give a couple of examples also on what you spoke about, Julius, is the companies that we're working with are on the one hand looking for innovation. There are companies that have found a blue colorant that can be used in food that is very difficult to find. There's a company that works on biopesticides. There are companies that are trying to reduce their reliance on renewables by for example, in perfumes and cosmetics. And there are companies that are looking at upcycling, using waste. So if you go to the wine industry, the champagne industry that uses grapes, the grape seeds they press oil from, and that's being used. So all of that are examples. Of course, they have global supply chains, and the global supply chains source ingredients, and those ingredients that are being sourced then need to follow good agricultural practices, respect biodiversity, can be agroecological practices, can be organic, can be, but it doesn't have to be. We all are on a journey. And I don't know if I have time to make it very, very concrete related to Brazil. There's a company that is one of our founding members. It's called Natura. You probably know it, Natura Cosmetics. And they are sourcing from the Amazon. They're sourcing from communities like we have just seen. And they have made commitments for 2030 to find 30 new ingredients from the Amazon that they can put in their products. And this as a way to generate new income for communities that are working with standing forests and as an alternative too. They've also decided that they want to promote the ingredients that they come from the Amazon in additional products so that they use it more. And finally, you mentioned clusters. They've set up a cluster in Belém where they are actually bringing a soap company and another company all together to find ways to create local economy locally in an area that is rich in biodiversity. So these are all examples of bioeconomy. It's a particular segment of bioeconomy, but when we heard in the morning, bioeconomy means many different things to many different people.
Thank you so much, Rick, for making it so concrete, even bringing your face cream here with us. I think that was very visual. And while I'm about to give the floor to Irene, I would like to invite, you have seen the video, you have heard Rick's thoughts on the topic. If you, from a country perspective, also want to add something on that, there's a microphone over there. Be brave. And we will later include you also in the panel discussions. Irene, you're a researcher with a lot of also experience on practical research and on really working with the communities. So you've heard the experience from one community in Brazil. You've been working in different communities in different African countries in Eastern and Southern Africa. Does it compare to your experience, what we've heard from Barney from Brazil?
Thank you very much, Yasmin. So coming from a research and development background, the video carries important messages. Number one, they talked about practical relevance. He talked about our project and cultural values. What does that mean? It means that the social context is really crucial. He talked about diversity, which we also notice in agroforestry. It enhances diversity, but sometimes people are not able to sell all those products that are diverse from agroforestry. He talked about preservation, which is also very important. It's not enough just to produce, but preserving is important. He talked about capacity development. We know agroecology and other practices such as agroforestry are really knowledge intensive, so capacity development is important. Collaboration, he mentioned several institutions or organizations that are collaborating. It is very important for research and development to co-create, to co-implement, co-monitor, and also co-reflect on the outcomes. One other issue he talked about was indigenous knowledge systems. They have some knowledge. Scientists can bring in added value, but we need to take care of and pay attention to the knowledge systems that are there. And the issue about observing and demonstration within the local context. I think those are some of the issues. Not forgetting to mention gender, youth among the social issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irene. You brought up new topics here, so maybe some of them are of interest to you, and you may want to ask a follow-up question in a minute more, because we've heard about biotrade and the different topics about it. You mentioned now the topic of co-creation, also agroecological and organic practices, and maybe some of these issues are what you're working about and want to know more. But first, we will also hear from the Indian perspective how we've already heard from Mr. Chachi some links between the rural communities, watershed management and participation. But you've also worked with a lot of local communities in India. And now that you've heard from the community in Brazil, what are your impressions and how do you compare it to your experience?
You know, listening to this gentleman talk about his experience in the local communities, we realized a lot of it when we were doing the watershed development approach. We were looking at it from a perspective of conserving water. We had put up small little dams here and there. And once when we went back to the community, and this strikes me when I heard this gentleman talk about the indigenous knowledge. It was then the farmers and the villagers had told us in this community, we don't get our fish back now. And then we asked the question, why? The check dams were done that prevented the fish from going back to spawn. And then we discussed among our team and we said, well, these check dams are required in one way for water conservation, but on the other way, it needs to address the fish. And that's when we started constructing fish ladders to help the fish go back. And the indigenous communities sent us the photographs of the fish going back. And we were so happy, and we realized it was very important. Every time we are with the local communities, we need to go back and understand what they did, particularly the elders. We need to go back to the elders, understand what they have done, why they have done it, what are the reasons, but also look at it from a little scientific perspective. We need to do the scientific assessments to see how much it validates, because then it can strengthen it, or it can help us make them understand, is there another perspective to it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcella, and also for bringing us in this other perspective on food and agricultural systems, fish, and bioeconomy. I think also many other countries can connect to this. And again, we hear the different stakeholders. How do science and local experiences connect? I don't see any volunteers. Do I see any hands? I can also move with my microphone. So then I saw Julius taking notes. So maybe he would like to comment on the experiences that we have just heard from your perspective. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for almost volunteering.
Yeah. No, thank you. I'm really encouraged. And, you know, all of you have mentioned the importance of indigenous knowledge and looking at the intersection of, you know, conventional modern science and indigenous knowledge, I think is a powerful tool for bioeconomy transition. That video was very powerful. And what I could see there is a willingness to move away from unsustainable indigenous practices to more sustainable but also commercially oriented, you know, bioeconomy and bioproducts and so on. So I think this is what will transform the community. The other point which I see very, very important from, you know, Rick, your work with clusters and so on, is locally led initiatives tend to be more sustainable. So you can see that within the cluster framework, you can create a lot of resilience and also, you know, you can increase incomes for families. But most importantly, you really strengthen the supply chains, both locally, connecting them to regional and then to international markets. So I'm personally very encouraged, and what you have all discussed resonates very well with my own thinking as well.
Thank you very much, Julius, for commenting on it. Still, I don't see any... we have a volunteer. Thank you very much for breaking the ice. Please, go ahead.
Thank you to the panel. I work with small towns in rural America, and the biggest challenge they often face is a lack of capacity. So when I heard Marina talk about the efforts in Brazil to build capacity, and I heard our speaker on the video, who's an embedded expert from the community working locally, that is such a big deal. I think the challenge when we think about the bioeconomy is for that trickle down to the local people, the producers, but not just the producers, the local elected officials, the local developers, the NGOs. How do you build capacity in those very small places that in some cases could be ours in a major metropolitan area? Thank you to the panel, by the way.
Super, thank you very much. And a question so relevant for all of us being here today. So who would like to start on this question on capacity building and trickling down of knowledge? Marcella?
Okay. You know, when it comes to resource restoration and inclusive of, you know, taking it further to management of, for agriculture, I'll talk in the agriculture context, including water management, which is very crucial in this whole framework. There are a lot of agencies that we ourselves do a lot of work in capacity building, developing methodologies together with the community and with other partners to see what are the best ways to take it forward. Afterwards, offering these sort of trainings to others across, developing these as capacity building opportunities. What we have realized that when there are a lot of challenges that come up in terms of addressing critical needs of sustainable agriculture or water management or the water stewardship, or getting communities and people to understand what is the situation of the aquifers below. Everybody considers it an infinite source until it's exploited. You know, how do you get all these? So when these challenges come up, what we do is, with the scientific perspective and a socio-ecological perspective, we do an assessment of what needs to be done, we work it out with the communities, develop methodologies of the communities and people to understand it, understand even the scientific part of it, and then offer it to others as capacity building opportunities. And I think this capacity building opportunities does not lie only with one agency. Everybody who does so many good practices have only to convert their knowledge and share this knowledge, which becomes capacity building with others.
Thank you, Marcella. And we see all the work to really go to the communities and do the capacity development on the ground. So I don't know how your experience is. I had Rick first, and then we have the whole panel completed. But please, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's different models, obviously, of capacity building, and each organization does it in a different way. We very much work with local companies that have the organizational and the management expertise to work together. This mint that I just showed you may very well come from mint farmers in the USA, where we are working with local companies that work together with the mint farmers to further make the practices more sustainable. We have a very interesting project in Madagascar, where we actually collaborate with the Bioinnovation project of GIZ, where there is a supply chain of wild collected plants. They're tiny little shrubs that are collected, then go a company in India, and then from India they go to France, and they end up again in a face cream. And what is interesting is that this little plant has active properties. And it's the active properties that are being extracted for the face cream. Now, we are working together with the local Malagasy companies to improve the collection practices so that there is higher active property in the leaves. That means that there is less biomass that needs to be exported to India, less energy needs to be used to extract it from the leaves. And at the same time, we are working to increase the prices for the local women that are picking, so that they, at this time of the year, it's the only source of income that they have. There's no rise, it's 6 months of wild collection, so they're basically using this income for food, and they're using the income to send their children to school. So it's two things. We're reducing. It's a circle. It is bioeconomy, and there it's collaboration with all the partners from India that give feedback on the active principle, biologists that look at how the collection needs to be done, and this together with the capacity from the local companies.
Thank you for stressing the importance of this local circularity and also the point of the gender lens. We've heard this from Nabat before, but also here we can really improve policy frameworks, adding the gender lens on it. And Irene, what is your opinion on capacity building and how we can trickle down the knowledge?
Thank you very much. So looking at some of the communities, for example, that we work with in African context, there's a diversity of language. Sometimes language barrier is difficult, and trainings have to be tailored according to the language. Or videos can also be produced. We also see that within communities, there are some farmers or community members who are faster to learn, and they can be lead farmers. And this approach is used in various countries, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and others. And this forms a very clear social network around learning, so that the farmers are learning together and they're exploring together, and they're teaching each other, and they're also demonstrating within the local context. One project, for example, that has been looking at capacity development in terms of knowledge management is the Knowledge Center for Organic Agriculture, which recognizes that there is quite a lot of training materials around, but sometimes they are not in formats which are easily usable by trainers or by farmers. So this project has been trying to really consolidate and validate this knowledge and making it more available. Another aspect is that in projects like MASAP, the Markets and Seeds Access Project in Zambia and Zimbabwe, we are working together with farmers and also looking at how we use the extension staff within these countries, build their capacity, but also leverage on the local context with the local stakeholders and lead farmers. Market influencers through social media or farmer influencers through social media. This is also increasingly piloted as a way of building capacity, and then voice recording and also videos. Farmers also learn very well when they can see things happening within their own context. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irene. And I think you kind of responded to the question I posed before to the policy participants, because I asked, how do you make sure to leave no one behind? And you responded, make this a co-creation process. Really include the local communities in these processes. And we are running out of time with all the panelists. We could have talked for hours. But I really want to close the circle here, talking about circularity, because we started with the intervention from BMZ and we will close with the intervention from BMZ. So I would want to give our experts here the possibility as a last statement of this panel, because after our Director General is going to close, if you have a recommendation of why bioeconomy could be an interesting topic to strengthen in development cooperation in general, and maybe German development cooperation in particular. What is, from your perspective, the added value of working more on bioeconomy? Yeah, you have, you're moving, so please go ahead.
Our collaborative research, as FIBO has shown that agroecology and organic can contribute towards one health, the health of soils, the health of people, health of environment, and animals. And bioeconomy from the African perspective, for example, if we look at the proportion of population that relies on agriculture, if we improve bioeconomy, if we integrate agroecology and organic, we are impacting a large population within Africa. Creation of new markets and niche markets, job creation, and innovations and supporting systems around these new markets are also incentives. But we need evidence and policy support, evidence-based policy.
Thank you. Also a plaidoyer to all your fellow researchers to work on the evidence. Thank you. Marcella?
In fact, that was the point I was going to take up. We need evidence. And when I look at it, it is the evidence, because evidence needs to convince all the stakeholders. We need good evidence that talks about a systemic approach that doesn't leave, that looks at the whole aspect of land restoration, what was talked about earlier, from the whole ecosystem health perspective. Without that, we cannot get sustainable agriculture or bioeconomy. So looking at an ecosystem health perspective, getting the evidence for its restoration from the economic terms and what it returns to the people, and looking at it sustainably with the different perspectives that go on for food security, for water management, we need to look at more what's happening to the quality of water, the quality of the soils, and its whole sustainability. I would root for putting in more evidence, generating more evidence in a systemic manner with the backward-forward linkages so that we look at low and no regret interventions to go forward.
Thank you, Marcella. So the importance of evidence, working with all the stakeholders, but also what we've started off, bioeconomy and planetary boundaries. If we don't have ecosystem health, we won't go nowhere with the bioeconomy. Thank you. So Rick, what would be your final recommendation?
Yeah, my final recommendation is maybe not on the why. I think it's clear. It's on the how. And I think there are 3 points. One is, it was made this morning, of this afternoon already in the opening panel, it's bioeconomy. And when we develop the frameworks, we need to involve the ministries of environment, but also the trade ministries, the industry ministries. We need to take an integrated and coherent approach. The second is that we need, for the private sector, clear frameworks that are workable. And a lot of the frameworks at this moment are not very workable. And the third is, there needs to be more collaboration with the private sector. I'm not sure how many businesses are in the room right now. I doubt there are many. We need to accelerate. I think nobody's talking about it here, but I think there's big risks. We are talking about competitiveness issues in Europe, in Germany, for example. There is pushback on green new technologies. There's inflation is really having an impact on the organic market, and the organic market is going down. If I look at my own country, we have farmers that are rebelling and revolting when there needs to be a change being made because they're not on board, they're not being heard. So this transition that we're talking about, we talk about win-wins. I think it is much more difficult than we think, and we really need to support all the actors in that. And let's also talk about the challenges ahead and not make it sound as if it's all going to be a triple win solution, because it's not.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you to all the panelists. You have a very urgent remarks, though, so we won't miss that. Irene, now spotlight is on you.
Okay, I think let me take the opportunity of being here to also reach out to our funding partners that agroecology, organic, and all these other sustainable practices, they are long-term. We don't get benefits immediately. So they also need longer-term planning and longer-term implementation framework and commitment. Also, to the fellow researchers and scientists, let's do a true cost accounting. Let's document and analyze all the benefits and trade-offs, whether intended or not intended. This is really important. And it's not enough if we just do research without disseminating it. Knowledge management is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. And I saw a lot of nodding, and the applause is yours, dear panelists. Thank you very much. And before the official closing, this is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to thank all the panelists once again. We could have talked for much more time, but I think there were so many aspects that we got curious about now. We started this dialogue. I wanted to thank BMZ for bringing us together here. And I would like to now hand over for the closing and final reflections and remarks by our Director General, Ariane Hildebrandt.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this inspiring discussion. Thank you to the panelists for sharing your experiences and your good examples at first hand on how to make a sustainable bioeconomy a reality. Thank you for recommendations in the end. I like the topics that just came up in the very end, like One Health, evidence, and win-win situation in cooperation with the private sector. Thank you very much. So to wrap up, this event is maybe not so easy because there were so many thoughts by so many people. I want to take a moment to reflect on what we heard, some valuable insights, messages, key messages maybe, and add some thoughts. Sustainable bioeconomy should be if not the new sustainable economic form of the future. As our keynote speaker, I think he has left, said in the very beginning, the most viable pathway to transform agri-food systems. The bioeconomy offers the opportunity to operate in a truly sustainable way in the long term and on the basis of a circular economy. There are great opportunities for resource-rich countries in the global south, not only to supply raw materials, but also to establish value creation and processing, thus creating income and jobs locally. At the same time, the bioeconomy faces growing demands of limited natural resources and increasing competition for the use of scarce agricultural and forestry land. The main source of the bioeconomy are agricultural and food systems and forestry, and while they produce bio-based raw materials for industry and biomass for renewable energies, they must prioritize global food security, respect planetary boundaries and the needs of indigenous people and local communities, as State Secretary said in the very beginning. So I'm coming back to this priority of food security. Therefore, we need to transform agricultural and food systems towards more resilience and ecological, economic, and social sustainability. Agricultural and food systems must become more effective and efficient to ensure and realize the human right to adequate food for a growing population worldwide, to avoid deforestation and land degradation, to protect and preserve the environment and biodiversity. Consequently, we need a bioeconomy that produces and uses biogenic raw materials in a context-specific and sustainable way. Bioeconomy must be inclusive and equitable, and as we have seen today, all stakeholders must be involved in the further development of a sustainable bioeconomy. Policymakers, we heard about the different levels of government, the private sector, academia, civil society, women, indigenous people. I was very impressed by the expert from Brazil and what he was telling us, local communities and the youth. So we heard a lot about holistic perspective in politics, integrated policy frameworks, national strategies that we need, capacity building. I also liked your cocktail of measures. There was so much in this session today. In the end, German development policy is committed to a sustainable transformation of agriculture and food systems and to the development of a sustainable bioeconomy that is aligned with the United Nations 2030 agenda. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's keep up the momentum and collaborative spirit to ensure that the dialogue and networking today will continue to inspire a sustainable bioeconomy development to building a sustainable development for all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hildebrand, for also wrapping us up. And yeah, we have landed. So thank you very much for flying with us, and have a nice evening.